Hitchcock would have loved to do, I think, a movie which has the explicitness that Basic Instinct had.
It's an absolutely great, rip-roaring story with a fantastic main character.
A modern version of an evil woman.
I just felt it was one of those special movies that comes along once in a while.
And it is very original, it's very daring. I think that will hold up for many, many years to come.
You would not get away with as much in today's cinema.
We needed a vehicle to make our case about Hollywood homophobia. Basic Instinct was ideally situated to be that vehicle.
I just heard about this fantastic script that Joe Esterhaus had written.
I didn't know Joe Esterhaus. I didn't know what he had done, really. Ultimately, I found out that he had done Jagged Edge.
He was one of those writers at that period of time that people were very interested in. When you read the screenplays, they kept your attention.
He wrote it on spec. It was a first draft. It was typed really with a lot of mistakes by Joe, and by purpose he does that so it looks very rough. And suddenly the script was on the market and everybody was trying to get it, and the price went up and up. And Mario then at a certain moment realizing, which of course the other people had realized too, that this was a script that was ready to go. This was not a script that needed 6 months of development. We can start immediately. And Mario outbid everybody by saying, okay, $3 million, which was a sensation at that time. He went first to Michael, and he basically made a contract with Michael before they got to me. Mario, of course, being European, Italian, Lebanese, knew all my European work. The Fourth Man, for example, which is, let's say, a prequel, you could say, to Basic Instinct. You know, Basic Instinct is nearly an Americanization of The Fourth Man without occult levels. The female killer in The Fourth Man is more a Black Widow kind of type. She is more an occult killer. She might have influenced reality by black magic if you want to, while here we have a straight killer. I want to shoot what's on the page. There is no negotiations about nudity. It will be exactly, basically what's there. You will be nude for 3-4 pages. No blankets, no this, no protection, no nothingness. Of course, the choices became limited. And then the process of the looking didn't lead to much, really, because all the people that I asked to accept my conditions, of course, backed off because they didn't feel comfortable.
You know I don't wear any underwear, don't you, Nick?
And one of the people that came in, of course, was Sharon Stone.
What are you, a pro?
No, I'm an amateur.
She was Catherine Termel from the moment she started to talk. It was like amazing. And I showed the tape to Mario, and I showed the tape to Michael Douglas. After 3 months, 4 months of testing, I had driven Michael crazy because every time that I had new people that came in, it was never as good as Sharon. Finally, after 3-4 months, Michael said, okay, let me do a test with her. And Michael was completely won over when he saw it, and when he worked with her, he had a very good connection with her. It was immediately clear that she could do it. And then after the test, he said, well, you know, I'll do it. I'll do it with her. I mean, it was not only working with her, basically, that had no name. And it was also all doing all these sex scenes, basically, that by then I had all drawn out very precisely. And when I gave it to them after the contract was signed, they say, well, this is what we're going to do. It was the script. But then, of course, you see it, basically, with everything. Let's say, when you see the angles that we used, isn't it? That it was not like shooting here, isn't it? If you would, it was always shooting here, basically, or shooting there, clearly. It was a really, for them, a hard confrontation, even then, with the storyboards. And I had said to Sharon, you have to accept that you do everything I want. Whatever I want, you have to do it. She said, okay. She didn't have much to lose, really.
It was a sort of role that was meant for Sharon Stone. It just happened to be exactly right for her at that moment in time in her life and how she was being perceived by the world at that point in time. And I think she grabbed it and hung on to it and made it what it is.
Do you have a cigarette?
I don't smoke.
Yes, you do.
Catherine is a woman who is as strong in any way as a man and whose sexuality is as free and unfettered as a man.
I'm not gonna confess all my secrets, Nick, just because I have an orgasm.
She comes from a tradition of film noir heroines and villains.
I don't make any rules, Nick. I go with the flow.
She's beautiful, she's feminine, and yet she's also completely and totally masculine. She's a superheroine in the way that, say, Sherlock Holmes and these characters are superhuman in their cleverness.
Hi.
Am I disturbing you?
No, come on in.
That was extremely contrived, but worked very well. And that I thought, okay, how can I make that true to myself? I say, okay, she's the devil. That basically makes her supernatural in some way. She could foresee with more insight than anybody else.
And I'm Detective Curran, this is Detective Moran, we're with the San Francisco Police.
I know who you are.
To be so clairvoyant, to be so, let's say, clever in planning. And it works.
Did I scare you?
How much did she pay you?
There is a lot of darkness in Michael Douglas' character. And Michael Douglas also, his whole persona and charisma has that.
It's fun to play darker parts. It's fun to play parts that have an edge to them that allow you not to have to worry about likability or if they like the character.
Michael is a man who has a mystery, a danger, something dark and evil, perhaps even to a certain degree. Of course, Jean Triplehorn again is guilty too in some way.
What am I supposed to say? Hey guys, I'm not gay, but I did fuck your suspect.
For a long time, there is the suspicion that she is the killer in it, and at the end, the police think she is, but we know better, probably. I was really delighted, especially when I started to realize how wonderful and what a beautiful city San Francisco was. And of course, realizing at the same time that I was shooting in the city of Vertigo. And Vertigo being one of my, with North by Northwest, probably my most favorite Hitchcock movies that I studied forever and still study. I knew Vertigo by heart, you know. So a lot of things that Hitchcock had done in Vertigo, you will see back in Basic Instinct, clearly. All changed a little bit, you know, and I didn't go back to the movie to check it out. What I remembered of Vertigo, I applied, you know. And if Hitchcock would take the Golden Gate Bridge, I would take the next bridge.
I don't think Basic Instinct is about anything. I think it's a really good story. It's a creation, a very beautifully crafted, lapidary creation of the cinema, full of brilliant concepts and a great character at the center of it.
Did you really think it was so special?
Some of the lighting that I use in it, it is like very playful. Like for instance, in a car sequence, very first time she gets picked up for interrogation, I really wanted to make sure that at the key moment of the scene that I wanted a specific light to hit her to enhance the drama.
He falls for the wrong woman.
And in reality, it would never happen, of course. Like right on cue, this heavy-duty backlight sun, and that puts her in a kind of, gives her the kind of this halo character around her, and makes her also for the first time really visible in the movie. The interrogation scene, no room would be ever lit like that. I mean, every interrogation room in a police thing would be incredibly boring. Some fluorescence on the ceiling, and that's it. I had very colorful lighting, fluorescent on the floor with special colors, and really stacked them, so it almost became like a Mondrian painting. And the same with the light that came from the ceiling, that was very seductive almost. She's so really beautifully focused and like sitting on this proscenium, this stage, while the guys, the interrogators, are in the dark, but they have this kind of shadowy prison-like on them. It looked like the roles are reversed. They are in prison and she's the one who's controlling them.
In the script, of course, it was clear when she changed his clothes. She said, can I put on something different? The dynamics of the scene, of course, were that she would be so, let's say, impressive to these people and exude so much sexuality, be so free in her choice of words, that she was in control. Whatever they attack her, whatever angle they ask, she has such a blunt answer about everything.
What are you gonna do? Charge me with smoking?
She's so upfront about her interest in sex, what kind of sex, how to do sex, what way, that she blows them away anyhow. So she's in full control.
Have you ever fucked on cocaine, Nick?
I felt that something else was suggested by the fact that she was nude. It was acknowledged in the script. It was not written into the script, that scene.
It's nice.
So I thought about something that happened to me when I was a student in Leiden, at university. We had a woman in our circles that was not a student, she was the wife of a journalist. So she was a bit more in artistic circles. And she always would come to parties and then she would do these things. That she wouldn't have any underwear. And my friend said, "You see that?" And she said, "Jesus, it's horrible. She should know that, because everybody can see it." So he walks up to her and he says, "Do you know basically that when you cross your legs, you can see really inside?" And she said, "Yeah, of course I know. That's the reason I do it. Are you an idiot?"
It's nice.
I remember they had big discussions in the editing room. Is what you were seeing were her thighs or it was her vagina? Depending if you were female or male, basically the male said it's her thighs, and all the females say, "No, you're out of your mind. You're looking right into it."
Honestly, it was her thigh. At least I didn't see it, and I looked.
That probably is one of the most famous shots in any movie of all time.
Basic Instinct is sort of legend now with Paul and me because, as I've said before in public and in writing and many times, it's probably the most difficult score that I've ever written. It was that difficult because Paul made it so. It's one of the best things I've ever written, and I give Paul credit for it all the way along.
The music of Jerry is phenomenal. I mean, I think that's one of these movies where music and film cannot be separated anymore from each other.
Paul is always looking for something that's not on the screen, which is what music's about. Music is not about what's on the screen, but what the audience is not seeing, but what the audience should be feeling. Well, I had written the ending of the music for the picture, which I thought went very well. Paul was very happy with it, except for the last 20 seconds of it. And the camera pans over, and you see the ice pick under the bed. I built to that and made a big statement musically on the reveal of that. And Paul comes over and he hears, he says, "Well, it's all good except for the ending." I said, "What's wrong, Paul?" "I think we should play the tragedy." So I wrote it, and I said, "Paul, actually, I like this a lot better than what I wrote before. Thanks." He was very happy with it. Later, when they were dubbing the picture, I get this phone call, dubbing stage, and this boy said, "Well, guess what?" I said, I bet you went with the first one." He said, "That's right. We played them both, and then we took a vote on the stage, and everybody wanted to go with the first one."
So where's this going?
Everyone has their opinion about the end.
I'm not sure anymore she did it.
To this day, I'm not even certain if she was really the killer.
I still don't even know if she's the murderer. You know what I mean?
The last movement, the movement in bed with the ice pick, is the final revelation. And the way that it's done in Hitchcockian fashion by simply focusing on it is the language of cinema telling you this is the answer to the story. It was quite an argument, quite a fight to keep it that way. But I think that it's actually the best possible ending.
San Francisco Police Department. I'd like to speak to Ms. Catherine Trammell, please.
We were doing our preparation in San Francisco. We had chosen locations, and we were told that Gay and Lesbian Societies up there had got hold of the script.
The most important thing that we saw in the script was, once again, the same character sort of reanimated. The homicidal, evil lesbian.
And that it featured, as the protagonist, the main character, a bisexual woman who killed men with an ice pick.
It continued a long line of lesbian psychotics in film.
Their interpretation and our interpretation of the script was totally different.
It was a wonderful vector for making very clear our political needs.
They really felt, perhaps because of some other movies, that this was the excellent target. This was a high-profile movie with a high-profile actor, shot in their own city. They said this script is completely anti-gay. First of all, they said, "Why don't you look at The Fourth Man, which is about a homosexual?" They said, "We have no time to look at your movies." I said, "But that's a movie that you can see how it treats homosexuality, as I do it in Spatters, as I do it in Flesh and Blood." I said, why don't you look at that? Then you know what kind of man I am. I'm coming from Europe. Homosexuality is not a problem in Europe, at least not in my country.
Being from Holland, there's such a liberal attitude for all of this that we were shocked about this reaction. It's like, wait a second, what is going on here?
We never said it wasn't right to be gay. We felt, we made it was, she was bisexual and she had a great time.
Who are you?
I'm Roxy. I'm her friend.
One particular flashpoint for me was the character of Roxy, Catherine's girlfriend. For one thing, she winds up dead, which was the typical story yet again. The real lesbian in the film is going to wind up dead, the bisexual is going to wind up with the man. Here you had another film in which queer sexuality and violence were deeply linked. They were coming to what they knew was a town with a reputation for having an open gay community to use as the backdrop and the color for this film.
And we tried to diffuse the situation by having a meeting.
All the representatives and the representative of the city council and anybody that basically had anything to do with gay or something like that was there on the table.
We offered effectively a critique of the film and asked them to incorporate changes on things that we found particularly offensive.
They had many faults with the dialogue.
If you don't leave her alone, I'll kill you.
Anything that they interpreted as being anti-gay or anti-lesbian, they felt that we should change the dialogue.
Let me ask you something, Rocky. Man to man.
I was embarrassed. It was the only time I've been with a woman.
They wanted me to change the characters completely. They wanted to change the parts. That basically that the man should be the killer and the woman should be the detective.
And then when we started to present these things, they challenged almost every one of our points.
I had said in the meeting, the issue is basically that being gay is not an issue. The movie is pro-gay from the very beginning because being gay is an accepted fact. It's like biological. It's there and who cares, Making it to a non-issue is the ultimate sign of being adult about it. It is not an issue. It's a part of life.
We went back to the original screenplay that Mario had purchased from Joe, and we shot that particular screenplay.
And action.
We did not want to be censors, but we wanted to act. We knew that this was a piece of commerce as much as it was a work of art, in fact, probably more so, and that unless we affected them economically, there was no way our message was going to be heard. So that, of course, meant going to the set.
Hollywood, you sick, lock your
There was an enormous amount of publicity, anti-publicity, and hate and anger by the different gay communities that were in San Francisco.
Our first night of shooting, we were demonstrated on by about 150 people. And this went on for 18 nights. They knew our location, they knew exactly where we were going, where we would be.
Every day there was chanting and screaming and trying to get on the set.
My lawyers had gone to a judge and we had a 300 feet restraining order against the groups. I also had about 100 policemen.
I thought it was great. I think it was nice war, And like they say, soldier of war, it's like the main character says there, Rutger Hauer, a little bit of war, not so bad. So I thought, this is life, I'm on the barricades. I'm making a movie that should be there, but they don't know.
They were very clever. They rang bells, blew whistles. They got passing motorists to honk their horns by holding up signs. If you're a 49ers fan, honk your horn. And of course, being San Francisco, everybody's a 49ers fan. I had to arrest people only when they encroached on the barriers. The police rounded up, I think 40 of them or 30 of them. And they said, well, we can't arrest them because they're not really doing anything to break the law. But you, who have the restraining orders, you're the person who instigated this, so you have to arrest them.
And then one by one, we were sort of brought before Mr. Marshall. He pointed to us and would say, yes, I want this person arrested.
The first night that I got involved in arresting, I think I arrested 26. They really hated me. And most of their venom, certainly all of their nasty songs, were related to me.
We had a sense of humor about what we were doing, and we saw the absurdity of what was going on, and this just added to that. You know, if they wanted to take it to that level, then we were just going to take it up another level.
And then they started to go for us, and they started to cut the cables when we were shooting. They were using, let's say, lamps to shoot in the camera, basically, so that you couldn't use the shot because there would be lamps, of course, shining right into the camera.
And it took quite a few weeks before it finally settled down, and it created for very much tension on the set. It created tension between the actors because they were made to believe almost by the protesters that they were doing something really wrong and dirty, and that they were kind of embarrassed about it. Michael was really made to believe that he was doing the wrong thing.
And Rolling Stone calls it one charged-up erotic thriller. Basic Instinct, rated R.
This film was going to be released, and regardless of what we had done, it was going to come out in essentially the form in which it had been written. It was still just as offensive to us, and it was going to have a multi-million-dollar publicity machine behind it. So we decided that we were going to ride that machine to get our message across.
How do you feel about the protests? Not just the ones in the past, but the ones that are planned when your film opens in big cities.
Yeah, well, I don't know. What can you do about it? I think they have the right to protest, and like we had the right to make the movie, I think they're aiming at the wrong target.
Throughout the entire protests, we had been labeled as censors. We had been told that we were trying to censor this film, that we were trying to stop expression. And we thought about that, and we realized what better way to sort of turn that around but to name our group. Catherine did it. Catherine, of course, is the killer in the film. By giving away the ending of the film, we were challenging Hollywood to see, well, which is more important to you? Is our freedom of expression any less valuable than the freedom of expression of the filmmakers? You can know that Rosebud is a sleigh and still think that Citizen Kane is a great film. If giving away the ending of this movie takes away its value, that's really not our fault.
I felt that they were all absolutely wrong, and that the movie would prove them wrong.
When I look back 10 years from now and I see Ellen, I see Will and Grace, I honestly don't believe that would have happened if not for the fact that there was an active movement, a vocal activist movement out in the streets demanding that Hollywood change its tune.
The moment the movie opened, it dispelled itself in a day.
It was the biggest success of the year, in fact, the most commercial movie of the year. And people thought it was audacious, of course. Some people, of course, probably thought it was too much of the sex, but a lot of people, of course, thought audacious and money. What else better can you have here in Hollywood, isn't it?
Paul got his typical reviews, which is that it was excessive.
We knew that there would be some let's say, people that would felt that we would have gone beyond the borders of what is considered conservative Puritan America, isn't it? And that would probably be angered by the movie, and a lot of reviews were angered, you know, and they expressed their anger in very mean ways in a lot of the reviews. But I think they were all shocked. It opened all the roads for me that I closed immediately down with Showgirls. Showgirls could change my career more. Also Joe Esters. Thank you very much, Joe.
It won't sell.
Why not?
Somebody has to die.
I think it's a great movie. I mean, it's just a nonsense movie too, isn't it? I mean, a woman killing people at orgasm, basically just for fun to see if she gets away with it, is a kind of an idiotic premise. In that direction, the movie is a bit strange, and of course, it's not realistic. But most thrillers are not. But from a point of view of achievement, of work, of artistry or professionalism, I think it's extremely nice movie.